Welcome to Parents and Teens Rising, the podcast that bridges the gap between parents and teens and helps families thrive. I'm Jasmine Chandler, teen and parent coach, wilderness rites of passage guide, and founder of Guided Passages. After over 16 years of working with young people, I know how challenging and rewarding these years can be. Each week, we'll explore real conversations, practical tools, and fresh perspectives to help you connect with your teen, support their confidence, and navigate the ups and downs. Let's rise together. Hey everyone, welcome back into the podcast. I hope your week is going great so far. I'm so glad you're here. Today I want to talk about some things that might seem like common sense, and honestly they kind of are, but they either get forgotten in the busyness of everyday life or we've just quietly given up on them because we don't want to have constant battles with our teenagers. So today we're talking about 5 foundations of teen mental health and well-being that can make such a real and tangible difference for our teens. And when teens have a solid foundation in these areas, everything else, like the confidence work, the anxiety management, the goal setting, all of it, it works so much better. But before we dive in, I just want to name something. I don't know any teenagers, or even adults for that matter, who have all of these things down perfectly. And that includes myself and my own teenagers too. So I just want to normalize this, right? We're not going for perfection here. What we're going for are high standards and high support. So helping our teenagers have the best foundation possible, even if it's just a little better than it was yesterday. Okay, so foundation number 1 is food and water. And I promise I'm not going to tell you to make your teen eat a perfectly balanced organic meal 3 times a day, although that would be absolutely amazing, right? That would be the gold standard, but that's not what we're going for here because it's not realistic. And here's what I do want you to know though. Your teen's brain is an organ. And like every other organ in the body, it runs on what we feed it. So when their diet is consistently high in processed foods, refined sugar, and low in actual nutrients, their brain chemistry is directly affected. We're talking about the neurotransmitters that regulate mood, focus, stress response, and energy. So for example, serotonin is the neurotransmitter that plays a huge role in how calm, happy, and emotionally stable your teen feels, and it's actually largely produced in the gut. So what they eat has a direct impact on how they feel emotionally, and that's just what the science tells us. Hydration is also so huge. Nothing survives without water, right? All life depends on it. And even mild dehydration has been shown to negatively affect concentration, mood, and energy in ways most people don't even realize. It's one of those sneaky things that contributes to that irritable, brain foggy feeling that many of our teens go through. And the research backs all of this up. With 1 in 7 adolescents worldwide diagnosed with mental health disorders, emerging research points to diet as a powerful but often overlooked factor. Ultra-processed foods make up roughly 65% of total caloric intake for the average teen in the United States. And teens also rank as the highest consumer of added sugars among all age groups. And it's not just about weight. Poor dietary habits have been correlated with memory impairments, and teens exposed to high-fat, high-sugar diets showed rapid onset of anxiety-like and depression-like behaviors. And meanwhile, about 42% of school-going adolescents drink soft drinks daily, and 46% consume fast food at least once a week. This is what we're working with. So what can we actually do about it? Here's the reality. A lot of what our teens eat is completely out of our control. They're out in the world. They're cruising by mini marts with their friends. They're going through fast food drive-thrus and grabbing the meal deal that comes with a massive soda. And since we can't be there for every bite, the move is to focus on controlling the controllables. So if your teen is willing to take a lunch to school, pack one. I know it might sound crazy that I do still pack my high schoolers' lunches sometimes, but this is something that I can control, right? And if I think that they might actually eat it instead of going to Wendy's or going to the Dollar Tree to pick up junk food, I want to send them with some good food. So this is one small thing that I can control that, might potentially impact their day because they're getting a balanced meal. Something else you can try is to just share a few science-backed facts about how nutrition actually affects the things they care about, like their mood and their focus and their athletic performance, to name a few. And this can really help teens connect the dots. So it's not a lecture, but a casual conversation. You can also just make dinner. A meal with vegetables and whole foods that you sit down to eat together is such a win. And this is also just one of the best things you can do for connection with your teen. Sitting down together for meals is such a great way to, just check in with them, to keep that foundation of safety and continuity and routine there. And it's just such a helpful way to, just keep the lines of conversation open and to spend time together as a family. So the question isn't, is my teen eating perfectly, but rather, are they giving their brain what it actually needs to function well most of the time? All right, and that's going to move us into foundation number 2, which is screen time and real life balance. So I fully recognize that screens are a part of life and they're not going anywhere. And some of what teens do online is actually totally fine. Connecting with friends, being creative, learning things. So I'm not here to demonize screens, although we have seen, from the research that they have led to a lot of detrimental impacts for our teenagers, because the reality is that our teens are using these devices, right? But the research on this is really hard to ignore. So when screen time, especially social media, displaces real life connection or physical activity or sleep and time doing things that genuinely engage them, their mental health will take a hit. Their anxiety will go up and their self-esteem tends to go down. The comparison culture online is relentless, as we all know. And even when teens know intellectually that what they're seeing isn't real, the highlight reels, the filters, and all of the perfectly curated lives, it still does affect how they feel about themselves, and that stuff starts to seep in. There's also something called dopamine dysregulation, where the constant quick hits of stimulation from scrolling literally train their brains to struggle with boredom or patience or focus and finding satisfaction in slower, quieter experiences. So things that used to feel good to them, like reading, being outside, having a long conversation with a friend, those things start to feel boring. And teens will often start to feel a low-level restlessness or dissatisfaction with everyday activities. I actually did a whole episode on screen time and teen mental health, so if you haven't listened to that one yet, go back and check out episode 12 called Teen Screen Time and Mental Health, 5 Hidden Impacts and How to Help Without Power Struggles. And the numbers confirm what we're already sensing. So according to the CDC, half of teens aged 12 to 17 are getting 4 or more hours of daily recreational screen time. And among that group, more than 1 in 4 screen positive for anxiety or depression symptoms when clinically screened. So an important thing to know is that teens who use social media more than 3 hours a day face double the risk of negative mental health outcomes, including depression and anxiety. Nearly 2/3 of teenagers say they use social media every day, and 1/3 say they use it almost constantly, with 46% of adolescents reporting that social media makes them feel worse about their own bodies. So even teens themselves are feeling it. 45% say their own social media use is excessive, up from just 27% 2 years ago. So it seems like this problem is like growing and growing, right? It becomes harder and harder to pull ourselves away from these devices, even when we know they're not good for us, right? As an adult, I struggle with this myself, and I'm sure many of you can relate. These devices are made to hook us. They are made to create addiction. And so our teens are often addicted to these things. They pull them in. There are variable rewards, so they never know what the next hit's going to be, right? So it keeps them scrolling and scrolling for the next thing. And I know this one is so hard because this one becomes such a battle, right? If we're always trying to, tell them to get off their phones and set limits and all of those things, it can be really, really challenging to not just create, a lot of divisiveness in the home, a lot of contention, a lot of pushback and all of that. Phones are one of the things that parents tell me are a constant struggle with their teenagers. So what can we actually do without turning into the phone police and making screens the thing we fight about every single day? Just remember that the goal isn't to ban anything, but it's to be intentional. So start by having a real conversation with your teen about what they actually get out of their screen time, because some of it is genuinely fine, and they need to feel like you see that. And from there, work together on creating some structure. So things like phone-free dinners, a consistent time when devices charge outside of their bedroom, or 1 or 2 activities each week that are fully screen-free. So you're not trying to control every minute. You're just trying to make sure that real life is still taking up real space. When teens have enough of the good stuff in their lives, in-person connection, physical activity, creative outlets, and time outside, screens naturally become less of a pull. So the best protection against overconsumption isn't restriction, it's helping them to create a full life and engage with real life things. All right, that moves us into foundation number 3, which is sleep. And I know this one is also one of those really challenging ones that can become a battle, but I want you to hear this because it genuinely is really important. Sleep is when the brain consolidates memory, processes emotions, regulates stress hormones, and essentially repairs itself. Especially during this massive time of brain development that teenagers are going through, all of that important work in their brain is happening while they sleep. So when teens are chronically underslept, and most of them are, their emotional regulation goes out the window. Things that would feel totally manageable when they're rested start feeling completely overwhelming when they're not. Their anxiety might spike, their motivation might tank, and their ability to think clearly and make good decisions and feel okay about themselves and their life is going to be directly tied to how much sleep they're getting. Teenagers need somewhere between 8 and 10 hours of sleep every night. Most are getting significantly less than that. And it's not just about the actual hours, it's about consistency and quality too. So what's worth understanding is that teens are actually fighting an uphill biological battle when it comes to getting to bed at a decent hour. During adolescence, the brain shifts its melatonin release to later in the evening, which is why your teen genuinely isn't tired at 10 p.m. the way you are. Their body is literally wired to fall asleep later and wake up later. So when school is starting at 7 or 8 a.m., the sleep math just doesn't work in their favor. And that makes what they do in the hours before bed so critically important. Things that ramp up the nervous system, like scrolling social media, watching intense content, or staying in bright light, push that already delayed sleep window even further back. Also, going to bed at wildly different times, sleeping with their phone in their hand, or getting woken up by notifications throughout the night, all of that disrupts the sleep cycles their brain actually needs. So the wind down matters just as much as the bedtime. And here's how serious this is. I'm not trying to scare you here, but I just want to give you some of the stats so that we can kind of drive this point home. According to the CDC, only 23% of high school students get at least 8 hours of sleep on an average school night. And that number has actually gotten worse over the past decade, not better. The National Sleep Foundation's 2024 poll found that 37% of teens aged 13 to 17 report symptoms consistent with at least mild depression, and just 8% are getting the full 8 to 10 hours of nightly sleep recommended for their age group. And teens themselves are actually reporting the same. 73% of teens say their emotional well-being takes a direct hit when they sleep less than usual. And that's not a coincidence. Dr. Lisa D'Amour, who's a clinical psychologist and the author of Under Pressure, Confronting the Epidemic of Stress and Anxiety in Girls, has spoken about the fact that sleep deprivation can mimic and amplify anxiety symptoms so closely that it's nearly impossible to get a clear picture of a teen's mental health without first addressing their sleep. So sleep isn't just one piece of the mental health puzzle. In many cases, it's the foundation everything else rests on. So what can we do? A lot of the same principles from the screen time conversation apply here because they're really deeply connected. A phone charging outside the bedroom at night is one of the single highest impact changes you can make. Also, you can talk to your teen about the connection between sleep and the things they care about, their mood, their athletic performance, and how they feel socially. When teens understand that sleep is a performance tool, not just a parenting rule, some of them actually get on board. You can also look at what's driving the sleep deficit. Is it anxiety keeping them up? Is it their homework load? Is it overscheduling? So the root of the cause really matters, and then addressing it is part of the work. So the difference in how a teenager feels mentally, emotionally, and physically when they're well rested versus chronically underslept is enormous. And once they actually experience that difference, they start to get it. All right, let's talk about our fourth foundation, which is movement and exercise. And here's something your teen might not know yet. Exercise is one of the most effective interventions we have for anxiety and depression. Not a small effect, a significant one. right? Study after study shows that regular physical activity increases serotonin and dopamine, the exact same neurotransmitters that many medications for anxiety and depression are designed to target. So it reduces cortisol, which is your body's primary stress hormone, and it builds confidence in a really direct way because when your teen does something physically challenging, even something small, they get real evidence that they're capable. And that is so powerful for their mental health picture. I don't know about you, but I see this directly impact my life as well. When I skip a week or two of exercise or going to the gym or getting my walks in, I immediately feel the difference internally. I start to feel a lot more low level depressed, a lot more anxious, and a lot more just blah feeling. And when I start getting back in the gym and start those walks up, it's almost an immediate change for me. So I don't know if you've ever experienced anything like that before, but I have personally felt those impacts. And I also see those impacts in my teenagers as well. When they're home for a whole week from school and they're not out doing their sports, they're not out exercising every day, I see it just start to impact them almost immediately. And the research on this is also hard to ignore. Multiple studies have found that exercise interventions produce significant reductions in both depression and anxiety in children and adolescents, while also improving self-esteem and social competence. Physical activity boosts teens' self-concept, self-esteem, and self-confidence while reducing stress, anxiety, and depression, and it's considered an important tool for both prevention and treatment of mental health challenges. And yet only 61% of adolescents aged 12 to 17 report being physically active for at least an hour on most days, which means a significant portion of teens are missing out on one of the most accessible mental health tools available to them. And they don't have to be an athlete. They don't have to go to the gym or run 5 miles. A walk outside counts. Dancing in their room counts. Shooting hoops counts. Biking somewhere counts. The key is that it's regular. It gets their body moving, and ideally, it gets them outside or around other people some of the time. So how do we actually help with this without it turning into a nagging battle? You can start by not making it about fitness or appearance. That's a quick way to get a teen to tune out. Frame it around how they feel. Talk about energy and mood and sleep quality and stress relief. If they're in a sport or activity they love, that counts and it's worth protecting in their schedule. If they're not, see if there's something new they'd be open to trying, even something low-key, like a walk with you or a workout routine they can start at home. Team sports in particular have been shown to reduce mental health struggles while also improving social skills and a sense of belonging. So if there's any interest there, it's worth encouraging. And the goal isn't a fitness regimen, it's just getting them in their body and out of their head on a regular basis. Movement is one of the most accessible, free, and powerful tools teenagers have for their mental health, and most people, most adults too, honestly, massively underestimate it. All right, and that's going to bring me to my final foundation today, foundation number 5. And this is the one that ties everything together, and it's the one I'm most passionate about, which is positive self-talk. We talk so much about what goes into our bodies and what we do with them, but we don't talk nearly enough about the constant conversation happening inside our teenagers' heads, because that inner dialogue shapes everything. How they see themselves, how they handle failure, whether they think they're capable, and whether they think they're worth caring for. So here's a principle that I want you to know. What you focus on grows. The thoughts you allow yourself to dwell on, the stories you repeat about yourself, your brain actually starts to find more evidence for those things. And that's not just a fancy idea, there's actually real neuroscience behind it. So you may have heard of something in our brain called the reticular activating system. This is a network or web-like formation in the brainstem that acts like a filter, deciding what information to bring to your conscious attention out of the millions of pieces of data your brain is processing at any given moment. And here's the key thing about this. The reticular activating system is heavily influenced by what you're focused on and what you believe. So if a teen is constantly telling themselves, I'm terrible at math, or nobody really likes me, or I always mess things up, their reticular activating system literally starts filtering their experience to find more evidence for those beliefs. So they're going to start noticing every stumble and miss every one of their wins. And if we flip that, the opposite starts to happen. And this doesn't mean that we're moving towards toxic positivity or pretending everything is fine when it's not, right? Just put a happy face on, just smile through the pain, right? No, that's not what we're talking about. What it means is helping our teens become aware of the thoughts they're letting take up real estate in their minds and learning to replace the ones that are holding them back with something more accurate and more empowering. And this is a skill. It can actually be learned, and it changes everything. So the first step here is for them to just start noticing their thoughts and noticing the impact of their thoughts on the way they feel and the way they act, right? Because every thought they think leads to their emotions, and every emotion they feel leads to their behaviors, and every behavior they have leads to their outcomes. And so much happens with the thoughts that they're thinking. And if their thoughts are just constantly negative and constantly beating themselves up, that's going to, lead to an entire chain of events that are sending them in a direction that they don't want to go, right? So what they can do is start by creating little micro improvements in the thoughts that they're thinking that are actually believable. So instead of saying, I always mess things up, it becomes, I messed that up, but I can figure it out. Or instead of, I'm bad at this, it becomes, I'm still learning this, or I haven't figured this out yet. Or instead of, no one likes me, they can tell themselves, I feel left out right now, but that doesn't mean I don't matter. So just little improvements, right? And I think you can probably hear the difference in those different thought patterns. It's not about lying to themselves, but what they're doing is expanding the story and creating a narrative that isn't about beating themselves up or making them feel like they're less than someone else. Research in cognitive behavioral therapy shows that the way we think directly impacts how we feel and how we behave. When teens learn to catch, question, and reframe their thoughts, we see measurable decreases in anxiety and depression and increases in resilience and confidence. And this is one of the most evidence-based tools we have. So how can we help our teens do this as parents? First of all, we model it. The way you talk about yourself matters more than almost anything you say directly to your teen. If they constantly hear you criticize your body or your abilities or call yourself names when you make mistakes, they internalize that as normal. And second, we can help them notice their thoughts without immediately trying to fix them. You might say, hey, I noticed you were really hard on yourself after that game. What were you saying to yourself in that moment? So remember, awareness is the first step. And at the end of the day, your teen is going to spend more time with their own thoughts than they will with anyone else in their life. So we want that voice inside their head to be one that supports them instead of tearing them down. And this is a skill. It can be learned. And when teens start to shift the way they talk to themselves, it changes how they show up in every area of their life. All right, so now you know what the 5 foundations are and why they matter. But knowing isn't the same as doing. And here's where a lot of parents get stuck. How do you actually get your teen on board with this stuff? Because, we know all these things, right? And we've been trying our hardest this whole time to get our kids to, eat good food and get good sleep and not spend too much time on their screens and exercise and talk to themselves kindly. I know we've all been trying so hard, but a lot of times it hasn't been getting through. And so we want to, find some strategies to really help to break that barrier of resistance, right? Because honestly, nagging and lecturing about these things does not work. And I'm sure we've all figured that out at this point. In fact, it often produces the exact opposite of what you're going for. And I say that with so much compassion because I think most of us parents are nagging out of genuine love and worry, but the delivery just is getting in the way. And so here's the thing about the teenage brain. It's literally wired to seek autonomy, status, and respect. So when those things feel threatened, when a teen feels lectured at or controlled or like they're not being trusted to make their own choices, the natural response is to push back. And it's not just defiance for defiance sake. It's a neurological reality. So instead of telling, we want to be asking. And instead of imposing, we want to be collaborating. And instead of making them do the thing, we want to help them find their own reason to want to do the thing. So here are a few questions you can try with your teen. You can ask something like, when do you feel like you have the most energy and the best days? What was different about those days? And here's a few more. On the days when you feel off or anxious or kind of blah, what do you notice? What was going on the night before or that morning? Or if you could feel less stressed and more like yourself, What do you think might actually help, even a little? Or you could try asking something like, what's one thing you could do this week that you think would make you feel a little better? Or what gets in the way of you sleeping well? Or eating better? Or getting outside, right? So what's getting in the way of these things for you? What would make it easier? So these types of questions treat your teen as someone who has self-awareness and agency. They create space for reflection rather than reaction. And they shift the dynamic from the parent telling the teen what to do to the parent and the teen actually thinking through things together. And that makes such a difference. It's a tiny shift, but it actually opens the doorway to them possibly receiving it or hearing it in a different way and actually wanting to take action, right? If they can come up with their own answers about why these things are important to them, then that's going to actually give them some motivation and some drive to make some of these small shifts. And remember that you're not trying to have the perfect conversation one time. You are just building a pattern of safe, curious conversations over time. And that's what creates real change. All right, one more thing I want to talk about, and this is something I see play out constantly in my work. It's how hard it is for teens to actually hear this stuff from their parents. And this is even if you're saying exactly the right things, and even if your relationship is super solid, and even if you just applied all the things I just said, right, in the last few minutes. It's hard for our teens to hear advice and input from their parents. And it's not because your teen doesn't love you or doesn't respect you. It's that when information comes from a parent, it often triggers that autonomy response that we've talked about before. Teens are developmentally wired to be pulling away and forming their own identity and figuring out who they are separate from their family. It's healthy and normal. And it means they're often more open to hearing things from someone outside the family system. So for example, this might be a coach or someone who can present the same information in a way they can actually hear it, who can meet them where they are, and who isn't emotionally tied to the outcome the way a parent is. And that can be so incredibly powerful, not because parents aren't capable, but because the relationship dynamic is just different. And teens often rise to meet that outside expectation in a way they won't for the people closest to them. And this is absolutely true for my own teenagers too. They will hear something from a teacher or a coach or a therapist or anyone else besides me. It might be the same thing I've said for years, but all of a sudden it clicks. All of a sudden they can receive it. All of a sudden they are inspired to take action on it, right? Because they heard it from someone who they could receive it from in that moment, right? And this is actually the work that I do with teenagers and young adults every single day in my Rise Up and Ignite coaching programs. So we work through these 5 foundations. We build confidence. We work on identity and purpose. We address the anxiety and the self-doubt. And we do it in a way that teens can actually receive it and run with it. Okay, so let's just go ahead and do a quick recap before I let you go today. So the 5 foundations. Number 1, food and water. Their brain runs on what we feed it. Nutrients and hydration directly impact mood, focus, and emotional stability. Number 2, screen time and real life balance. When screens displace real connection, sleep, and physical activity, mental health suffers. Real life needs to take up real space. Number 3, sleep. 8 to 10 hours matters enormously. Emotional regulation, anxiety, and even self-esteem are all closely tied to quality sleep. Number 4, movement and exercise. One of the most effective underutilized tools for anxiety and depression is regular movement because it boosts the same neurotransmitters that medications target. And number 5, positive self-talk. The inner dialogue our teenagers have shapes everything. What you focus on grows, and the reticular activating system means the brain finds more evidence for what we believe about ourselves. And we can use that to our benefit instead of to our detriment. And here are a few tips that we went over for helping your teen implement these things. Start with one foundation, not all 5, because overwhelm can really shut people down. And then ask curious questions instead of making declarations. Curiosity keeps the door open. We can also model the things that we're encouraging. Teens notice what we do far more than what we say. Celebrate small wins, too. A teen who goes to bed 30 minutes earlier is moving in the right direction, so we want to acknowledge it and celebrate it. And then finally, keep the standard high and the support high to match. These 2 things go together. So there you have it, 5 foundations that can genuinely change how your teenager feels, thinks, and shows up in their life, and some real practical ways to help them actually get there without it turning into a power struggle. So if you're listening to this and thinking, I wish my teen could hear someone talk to them about this in a way they could actually receive, that's exactly what my 12-week coaching programs for teens and young adults aged 12 to 24 are designed to do. We work through these foundations together. We build the confidence, the self-awareness, and the tools that actually stick. And teens leave knowing themselves better, feeling better, and showing up in their lives in a whole new way. So you can learn more about my Rise Up and Ignite coaching programs at my website. The link is in the show notes. And if you have questions or you want to talk through whether coaching might be a good fit for your teen, just reach out. You can send me a message on Instagram at jasmine.guidedpassages or email me at jasmine@guided-passages.com. I love having these conversations. I would absolutely love to hear from you. So please don't hesitate. Just reach out. Let's talk about it. Let's see what we can do to get your teen the support they need. All right, that's it. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for caring this much about your teenager to listen to this entire episode. The fact that you're listening to something like this and trying to find better ways to support them, that matters so much. They are so lucky to have you in their corner. I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your day, and I will see you next week. Bye, everyone. Did you enjoy the show? If so, would you take 30 seconds to subscribe so you don't miss an episode? Leave a quick review so more parents can find these conversations, and maybe even share this episode to your stories. And if you want to connect, please send me a DM on Instagram. I'm at jasmine.guidedpassages, and that's Jasmine with a Y. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll talk to you next week.